Ladies and gentlemen, we are live with the Charm City Tennis Talk with one of my best friends, Landon Sklar. Super excited to be here, man. Chop it up with you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Super excited to be here.
Likewise, bro. Can you believe it's the 100th Grand Slam since 2000 upon us here in 2025 Australian Open?
Oh, it's going to
Let's
be a
go.
good season. I'm real excited. Going to get kick it off with the Australian Open, and let's get into it.
Let's get after it. So I figure we just start from the top, man. The first section, obviously, we have the favorite and the defending champion, Yannick Sinner out of Italy. What are your thoughts on this man coming into 2025 and his hopes for the Australian Open?
Well, if you know anything about me, lifelong loved Novak Djokovic. All time. I was so happy when he won the Olympics this year. That's the one thing he needed, and I think him doing that, him winning any type of Grand Slam would be the cherry on top. But with that being said, I don't know how it happened, but Yannick Sinner over the last year has become one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player, because although I love all these top players in the top 500, Yannick Sinner is just perfect for tennis. He's great for tennis, and I think him facing a little bit of this adversity kind of made me like him a little bit more. Kind of seeing some people against him, and just seeing him battle through the adversity. Having him and Carlos is a great rivalry, and obviously having Djokovic in the big three. But Sinner, I think he had a great year last year. Obviously, probably the best season upon anybody. And coming into Australia, I think him winning the year-end tour and tournament, and coming to Australia, he's the favorite. And after the draw came out, his odds only went up even higher. So I liked him before the draw came out, and I like him even more after the draw comes out. And I just think he's just gonna roll through. The only thing is, injuries. He's got a few tough matchups. Everybody he's playing, they're all great players, but Sinner is on his own level. So
Yeah, you think about it. Like 3 months ago, this guy was what, like plus 250, plus 300 to win it all, and now he's down to near a plus 100 coin flip. And you look at the draw, man, and I think it's actually extremely favorable, right? You're thinking of a draw with Djokovic, Carlito, and Zverev on the other side of the bracket. So when you talk about a tough matchup, you're looking at either like Medvedev on that side or perhaps even Taylor Fritz. But if you look at his like first section, right? You've got Holger Rune in that first section there. I don't really see anyone else that could even compete with him, right? In the second quarter or third quarter, you have the up and coming Frenchman Giovanni, GMP as we call him, right, with the elite serve.
yeah,
But yeah, man, I
what
think Sinner absolutely has an easy road, and it's his to lose, man. We talked about this off stream, but you've got to imagine with how dominant of a season he had last year, right? 73 wins or so. He had two Grand Slam championships. He's only getting better from here. So really really eager to see what he can do and see if he can defend his championship.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And going back to that section, I was looking back, and obviously besides the finals, another matchup that could be, maybe a guy could get a set off him. Maybe it could be something to look out for. Is a guy like Hooper Hurkacz. You never know what
Mm.
could happen with him. He's obviously a great player. No, I wouldn't say great player, a good player. And him versus Sinner in a matchup could be a potential. I wouldn't say Sinner is gonna lose to him, but that could be a matchup to look out for. But yeah, like you said, I don't. He's got a very good draw. So you couldn't have got a better draw. I'd rather be on this side than the other side. With that being said, nothing's a give me, but it's a pretty good draw for our guy Sinner.
Yeah, and you made a good point because, like, if you look at the server ratings, right? Herkag's a Polish man. He's usually around the top five served on tour. If you look at the numbers, I'm looking at his server rating here. You have GMP number one, Zverev number two, and Herkag's number three based off the last 52 weeks. So, yeah, someone with a big serve, I think, is someone that can at least compete with Sinner. But the reality is Sinner is on a completely different level. But to kind of like move on to the second section, right? I mean, you've got Tsitsipas in that section taking on Alex Mitchelson, the young American, which is a
Yep.
great matchup. You have, of course, Damon Noor versus Van de Zandschulp, who upset Carlito in a Grand Slam last season. But what are your thoughts on this section? Who may come out of that area of the bracket?
So in the Carlitos section.
So section 2. So Tsitsipas, Mitchelson,
Sorry,
and then Damon Noor on the bottom, who I'm always impressed watching Damon Noor because like he's got such a great return game, and he honestly can compete with anyone, right? But I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on that section, and if you hypothetically we see like a Tsitsipas Damon Noor matchup in the fourth round, very intriguing matchup there. But
so
maybe like on the future of Tsitsipas and just and how Damon Noor may handle this tournament.
For sure. So a guy like Stefanos Tsitsipas, tennis is in a great state right now where we have all these good and young and up and comers, and I maybe only feel that way because I'm more into it than I've ever been. But a guy like Stefanos Tsitsipas is a guy that coming up, he was one of the guys, maybe one of the guys that could take it to the next level, and he was up 2-0 on Djokovic in the French Open. He's had his moments, but I think over the last few years, he's kind of regressed, and people have gotten better. So while his levels come down, people have caught up to him. Yeah. He's facing a guy in Alex Michelsen in the first round, which is a tough first-round matchup. Alex Michelsen is a guy that I've been following for the last maybe 2 years, I would say, and he's really coming into his own. I think only as he gets older, he's just going to get better, but he had a pretty solid season last year. He's ranked 41th in the world, and I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup. I think this is a big tournament for Stefanos, and I would like to see him do something. Obviously, against any American, I'm always gonna, most likely I'm gonna root for the American. They have played once. They played last year in Tokyo, and it was 1-3 sets, and Tsitsipas took the first set, and Michelsen took the next two, 6-1, 6-2. So that's going to be a good one, but I think, whoever comes out of that matchup right there in Tsitsipas versus Michelsen, they have, I'm not going to say give me second-round matchup, because actually Landaluz is a guy from Spain, 18 years old. He's a qualifier, and he's got a pretty good shot of making it to the next round. But I would say whoever wins that matchup has a good shot of making it to the third round. So that's one of the first round matchups I'm definitely keeping an eye out for. As we go down, I mean, Dalio from Canada, that's a guy that we've talked about and just came on at the end of last year. Luca Nardi, just another guy from Italy. So that'll be a pretty solid matchup. I like Khachanov, Silent K. He's a guy that's always just a sleeper. So could see him making, quarterfinals, giving a guy a shot for them, giving a shot. But, de Minaur, de Minaur is a guy that really came on last year, and he's got a pretty good game. He's got a pretty all-around solid game when it comes to playing a guy like Sinner. Sinner is going to work him around, but he's top 10 in the world, and, so we'll see how he comes out of that, but I think he wins that matchup. I could definitely see us having Tsitsipas or Michelsen meeting up there, and we'll see how that plays out, but most likely in that section, that's what we'll be seeing.
1,000%, and not to mention your boy Manarino out of France, the Baldy. But man, Tsitsipas is such an interesting fella because this man was ranked number 3 in the world back in 2021. He made an Australian Open final back in 2023, right? 2023 years ago. So I mean, he's got all the experience in the world, but I think last year we really noticed that this man perhaps may have already reached his peak, and I'd be really intrigued to see if he can overcome some of those demons, because I think him and his team know that last year was absolutely a down year. So I think this is a huge statement year for Tsitsipas if he's worthy of being in that top 10, or if we're going to kind of slowly see him regress, back in the rankings. But yeah, super interesting section. I think Tsitsipas, de Minaur is probably more likely, but like you said, Diallo with that big serve out of Canada is definitely in contention to perhaps make some noise and see an upset versus Tsitsipas if they see each other. But if that's everything in that second section, I would love to move on to section 3, which is super interesting, right? Because you got, Taylor Fritz versus Brooksby, and if I'm not mistaken, Brooksby already beat this man. Was it last year?
Yeah, so that's a matchup I'm actually pretty excited for. As you know, Jensen Brooksby, he's a guy that was facing the suspension, and 24 years old, Jensen pretty much grew up playing with these guys. He grew up. He's a few years younger than Fritz, but they played one time, and they played at the U.S. Open in I believe it was 2021, and Jensen won it 3-1. But when they played, I do remember it being a pick'em. So it was a pretty much even matchup. And looking at this matchup, I mean, this is his pretty much first matchup back since 2023. His last matchup was 2023. He lost to Tommy Paul 3-0, which was a pretty even matchup too. So he's got a lot of potential. Obviously, taking that time off. It's gonna be a fun matchup to watch, just to see him get back out there. But Taylor Fritz, how we saw him play last year, really coming into his own, and I think this is a very big year for Fritz because, it's hard to capitalize and go off of a year like that, like last year. But how can you build off it? How can you come back from that? Obviously, making the final of Wimbledon, and so we'll see what he does from that. With that being said, too, I think he will do a good job in that section, and I think he's got a pretty good shot. Also in that section, you have Bono Church. Bono Church is also a guy that hasn't really – he had a pretty solid year last year. He won out of nowhere. He won a Masters 1000.
Towards the end of the season, was it?
It was in Toronto. I don't know if it was
Q3 or Q4.
Or yeah, I may be wrong. But this is a guy that came up with team, and when I was just kind of getting big into tennis, I was like, oh, Borno was the future, and him and team. And injuries do happen, things do happen, but he had a pretty bounce back year last year. So that's always somebody to look out for. Obviously, in that section too, we can't go without saying, Gael Monfils, just talking about that matchup right there. That's going to be exciting. Gael Monfils is a guy that he's got all the talent in the world. He's very, very good, even at this age of 38. Yeah. Grand Slams have always – that's what I love about men's tennis is Grand Slams. There's 4. It's the best of 5 sets really separates it because you could have guys that are better, but the physical fitness. And that's kind of something that's always haunted him in that when it came to that. But, man – as far as winning the Australian Open, that's pretty far-fetched, but he could always make a run, but he's facing a guy in, Petchicard, and this guy, we could talk about him for days. This is a guy that I was telling you about last year was coming on the scene, and he just blossomed on the scene, and huge serve, 21 years old, and he's got so much growth, so much room to go, and he's only going to get better. So this is a guy that's got a lot of potential, and he actually made a big run last year in the Grand Slam as a lucky loser. We love lucky losers here, and so that's going to be an interesting one. If Fritz and Petchicard meet up, would be cool to see Fritz make a run, but yeah, I also love watching Petchicard. I'm a big fan of the big serves, and Australian Open, you got the hard court, so we're going to see. That's going to be a pretty interesting section. Those first-round matchups are pretty crucial.
It's kind of like out with the old, in with the new, right? Guys, 20, it's a 17-year age difference, both from the same country. So that is a super interesting matchup. And how can we forget without saying another American versus American in this section, right? You got Brandon Nakashima versus Ben Shelton. Obviously, Ben Shelton has his ways. He has all the potential in the world. But, sometimes we see those mental lapses in his game. So I'm really intrigued to see if in 2025, if he's able to kind of mature a little bit and overcome a little bit more of that adversity, because like we talk about all the time, Landon, with this sport, it's one thing to have all the talent in the world, but another to remain so composed and calm in those really stressful moments. And I think that's why, GMP has so much potential. Sure, he has a great serve, but he's also kind of green. But once he matures that serve game, man, and he already has the demeanor, right, to overcome that adversity. He's not, Andrei Rublev slamming his racket into the stand. So this is probably one of my favorite sections, just given the amount of talent, and you've got the two Americans going at it, the other two Americans going at it. You got two Frenchmen going at it, and you even have two Italians going at it at the bottom of that section, right? Matteo Arnaldi versus Lorenzo Musetti, and Musetti's a guy who went to the semifinals at Wimbledon, bronze